The unfortunate passing of Queen Elizabeth II, alongside the new anointing of King Charles III, has certainly sparked a lot of renewed interest in the British royal family. And whilst it may seem magical to have real-life regal princesses and kings in the 21st century and magnificent royal parades, it's important to have a look at some of the facts on the other side. So in this video we're going to be looking at some of the more dark facts about the royal family. Now before we dive in, it's important to disclose one thing. I understand that this is quite a sensitive and controversial topic, so in this video my opinions will be laid aside and we're going to be looking at this on a purely evidence-based basis. So with that being stated, we can now jump in. Now we're going to be starting off by looking at the good which a royal family does provide for the UK, and there is quite a bit of it. They do many charitable events, which of course helps the public of the UK. And on top of that, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of tourists per year flock to see various royal residences, which is helpful for the UK on a status basis, but also on an economic basis for the money which tourism brings. So what is the problem then with the firm, as it is called? Well, in this video we're going to be looking at a few of the issues which have people divided on the royal family. And we're going to be starting off on the topic of money. Now the UK, whilst being a rich country, is actually quite wealth unequal, meaning that people at the top hold quite a considerable amount, whilst those at the bottom don't tend to have too much. Now we know that in 2016, the Office for National Statistics calculated that the richest 10% of households in the UK hold about 44% of all wealth, whereas the poorest 50%, by contrast, hold just 9% of all wealth. And this data may seem irrelevant at the moment, but it is important for setting the scene. The UK is a country divided heavily by wealth, and a significant proportion of the population struggle to get by at the end of each month. And on top of this, wealth disparity has been rising since 1980, and we all know which side of the coin the royal family is on. Nobody knows for sure what the Queen's exact net worth was, but in 2022, the Sunday Times estimated her wealth to be around £370 million on their 2022 rich list, and it was up £5 million from 2021. The increase is apparently linked to the Queen's stock market investments. So the Queen is very rich, that's one thing that we know for sure. But there's something a bit deeper that we must look at going forwards, and that is the topic of inheritance. Now once more we must set the scene. If you were living in the UK and a parent was to pass away and you were given the money, essentially you would be taxed at 40% for anything over £350,000, and the tax money would of course go to funding the country and helping to revivify all of the services which we all use and need. So by that logic, the incoming king should have paid £150 million in tax at the minimum. But in actuality, King Charles paid 0% inheritance tax due to a law applying to monarchs, where monarchs do not have to pay inheritance tax at all. And of course, in a country where many of the services are struggling, this lack of tax on this wealth transfer is quite unfair and has a lot of people quite apoplectic, thinking about, of course, the fact that they're struggling to get by, and the royals have just passed on money without paying any tax whatsoever. And whilst we do not know for sure what King Charles inherited, we know it would have not only been money, it would have been probably some of the vast residences of the royal family which are so shrouded in history that they are basically priceless. Now moving on to the subject of power. Inevitably, a lot of points involving money and power can overlap, as money does certainly influence power. And a family which is very powerful is indeed the royal family. Because if we look around the UK, the monarch does own quite a few things. For instance, the monarch owns the seabeds around the kingdom. Not only is that the case, but the royals are allowed to collect royalties from the seabeds, benefiting from offshore wind farms. Now as of mid-June 2022, the Queen's seabed value was estimated to be at a staggering £5 billion. And whilst this is only one element where power is visible, it is very clear. And we could go over a lot of elements, but it would simply take too long, so you get the gist of what we're focusing on here. Clearly there is a lot of power which the monarch holds across the country. And whilst you may think it's fair that the monarch owns these assets, and many billionaires own much more and have much more money, one thing is definitely true. People like Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos have experienced meritocracy. They have worked up from the lower to middle classes and now experience living at the uppermost scale, whereas the royal family simply do not have that grind. They were born into these positions, and that's one thing which people see oftentimes as quite unfair. Now, speaking about power and something which people see as unfair, we know that the royals are born into this position. For instance, the first son or daughter of this person or that person is guaranteed to be the next in line to be the king or queen. But why is this so? Because the UK is supposedly a democratic country where prime ministers are elected based on what the British public think that they can provide for us, so why are the royals not elected? And this may seem irrelevant as the royal family are not instrumental to the democracy of the UK, right? Well, that's actually not true. Laws in the UK generally go through royal assent, meaning that they need to be approved by the monarch before they become actual law. Now, on top of this, we know that the royal family cannot be taken for civil and criminal proceedings, meaning that they are effectively immune to the law. And this seems like a lot of power for an unelected official to hold, right? Well, it gets quite a bit worse, because when we look at things which appear to be unfair, we see the nature of operations within the family as well as out. The royal family is quite a harsh business, and it has to be to maintain a good image with the public. But one thing which shows the harshness of the business better than anything is the recent feud between Harry and Meghan versus the royal family. Now, there's been a lot of insights from Prince Harry talking about the harsh nature of the family, and while some people see his opinions as far from credible, some people think that he is telling nothing but the pure truth. And I'm not here to provide an opinion on that, but what I'm saying is, if Prince Harry is indeed telling the truth, things do appear to be quite dark within the day-to-day operations of the family. Now, whilst a lot of the British public do still quite like Prince Harry, on the flip side, one royal which a lot of the public do not like anymore is Prince Andrew, due to his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein. Now, whilst no convictions have been brought against Prince Andrew, his relationship with Epstein has certainly tarnished his relations with the public, meaning that he has had to step back from quite a lot of royal duties. Now, despite this, as of current, and it could be changed, if anything was to happen to our current king, Prince Andrew could be the next in charge, as that is the way that the line currently runs. And this is one element of operations which people do see as something which could be changed, as things like this are not fair because many people in the public would not have voted for Prince Andrew to become an official anyway. Now, speaking of things which appear unfair as well, we've seen one more controversial topic being the Commonwealth, because not only does the monarch rule the UK, they're also head of state in 15 other countries. Now, recently on a tour to the Caribbean, members of the royal family were lamented. And whilst Prince William does suggest that the monarchy would support any decisions to become a republic, there are quite a few challenges which come with this. And whilst it may be possible to remove the monarch, a lot of countries haven't chosen to, and there are some fair reasons for this. For instance, they would suffer a loss of privileges which the Commonwealth can provide, including things like a supportive community of independent and sovereign states, alongside the aid of 80+ Commonwealth organisations. Now, of course, in the votes to keep the monarch as head of state, it doesn't necessarily represent the views of the whole of society. It would of course represent the majority, which is fair, but it's one element where we need to ask, why is an unelected head of state not only ruling the UK, but also many other countries which resemble the UK in basically no ways? And I know that this is one of the more diversive topics, as people don't really like to speak about this one, but it is something which a lot of people see as one of the dark and harmful parts of the family, as it goes back to the roots of how the family and the country of the UK got there in the first place. And a lot of negative connotations have been coming from this in recent years. Now, it's been a quick video, but overall I wanted to say, I know that people are not going to like this video, and that is fine. A lot of people will say that these points are not a big deal, and if that's your opinion, I have no problems with that. We are all allowed to have our own opinions, but ultimately, the intention of this video was simply to shine a quick light on elements of the royal family which people may not know about, or other elements which people see as more controversial. It's been quite short, we only decided to focus around some key issues, and we could have talked about many more. And whilst royal families are born into a world of wealth, owning a panoply of assets across the kingdom and the world, the royals have a vast degree of wealth, and many think that this is a major thing which isolates most people from the royal family. And while some believe that is the whole purpose of the family and the organisation, others see this as a major problem. So what do you guys think? Do you think the problems which we outlined in this video were sufficient enough, or do you think these are just minor things and again this is not too key? I want to hear what you have to say down below, so do drop me a comment, but for now it's a goodbye and I'll see you in next week's episode.